Soon you will hear a new voice in your home.
The first 24-hour news channel.
The nation's first 24-hour
news channel aimed at African Americans.
A new company will soon launch the first 24-hour cable channel aimed at
There is another
African
cable
American
TV
viewers.
network. It's about to begin operating.
African American viewers will soon have their own 24-hour news channel.
He's back. Famed trial attorney Willie Gary is hoping to raise some eyeballs with his latest project.
A 24-hour cable news channel with an African American perspective is in the...
It is the voice that speaks for African Americans, a distinct culture, a strong and growing consumer market, an underserved and misrepresented audience, a force in our urban communities, and an important segment of cable television's most valuable customers. Hello, I'm Gordon Graham.
And I'm Val Bracey.
Never before has the announcement of a new cable programming service been anticipated by its target audience with this kind of excitement.
MBC, 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 MBC. We are launching a campaign to move historically black colleges as far as athletics are concerned to the forefront. And I'm just happy that we have this legendary this man that I just have so much respect for, and this man that has done so much for so many college students throughout America, and that's Michael. Michael, we love you, Michael Jackson. Let's give him a big hand, please. Let's hear it for Michael.
I have been waiting and hoping that we would get a newscast, a news channel dedicated to African American issues and to minority issues.
There are very few things that excite me, but this is one. And it excites me because it opens the door for change. Information gives people an opportunity to make changes.
MBC Network News, the urban voice, is the voice of Black America, the nation's largest ethnic group and the ethnic group with the nation's highest buying power. MBC Network News is a breakthrough in television news from a company with a history of making history.
MBC launched as MBC Gospel on satellite in 1998. Its mission? To build better communities by providing African Americans with more positive and uplifting programming.
By 1999, the network expanded its programming, dropping the gospel name as it achieved basic cable distribution.
By its second anniversary, MBC had diversified further, offering more original programming and favorites like MBC Theater and America's Black Forum.
Building on Willie Gary's vision to help empower African Americans, MBC launched its Future of Black America series with town hall forums in urban communities aimed at informing the public on issues affecting African Americans.
In 2002, MBC's lineup included more than 70 live sporting events from major black colleges and universities.
Today, MBC continues to make a positive impact on a growing audience. The network is now available in more than 24 million homes in 2,400 cities in 48 states.
MBC Network News is the voice of the strong and growing African American consumer market. This past year, the median income for African Americans was the highest ever recorded. The poverty rate was the lowest ever recorded, and a record number of African Americans were attending college.
African American income is increasing 60% faster than that of other households. With average household income now exceeding $40,000 a year, more than half of all African Americans are middle class and above. 1 out of every 6 households in the United States with incomes above $100,000 is African American.
The growth in buying power of African Americans has exceeded that of all other segments of the population each year for the past 12 years.
You know, this is major. This will be the first urban news network in the world, and we're going to make it happen. Failure is not an option. Get ready, America. Here we come.
MBC Network News is the voice of loyal viewers. African Americans watch an average of 74 hours of television per week. That's 40% more than any other group. Yet the viewing habits of African Americans are not the same as those of the average viewer. African Americans will seek out and stay loyal to programming that represents them and that features African Americans. For example, each of the top 5 rated shows for African American viewers featured black casts and black lead characters.
This news channel is going to be a revolution in television.
MBC Network News is the voice of underserved and misrepresented news viewers. The Pew Research Center finds that African Americans watch television news at a higher rate than any other group, and cable news networks at a much higher rate than any other group. Yet African Americans feel that the television news presently available is fundamentally unfair and that it perpetuates negative stereotypes. For example, while homicides among African Americans have decreased 33% over the past decade, the Pew Research Center found that television news coverage of these homicides during that same period increased 473%.
This is an important thing. I said to someone in the media a moment ago that while this is important as far as black news, African American news is concerned, it's important to the rest of the country as well, because there's much that does not get covered, that ought get covered, and will get covered now.
The nation is becoming more diverse, but up until now, television news is not reflecting that diversity. Today, there are several very successful news networks that serve to inform, educate, and empower our Hispanic communities. MBC Network News, the Urban Voice, will be the nation's first network that serves African Americans.
MBC Network News is the voice of a very valuable segment of your customers. 2 out of every 3 African American households subscribe to cable television, representing over $4 billion in annual subscription revenues. Although African Americans represent approximately 13% of U.S. households, they represent 25% of premium service subscriptions, subscribing to those services at twice the rate of other households. And presently, 2/3 of broadband users reside in the top 25 urban markets, many of which have a numerical majority of African Americans. However, in a recent CTAM study, 2 out of 3 cable executives stated that the biggest advantage satellite providers had over cable was the lineup of ethnic programming they carry. The most recent poll produced by CTAM's research committee shows that percentage of African Americans subscribing to satellite dish service increased by 33% last year. And CTAM calculates that 6% or more than 500,000 African American households are at risk of switching to satellite service unless more African American programming is added.
I've heard comments all over the country about people, especially African Americans, wanting it. They wanted some programming that would not be just videos, that would not be just geared toward teenagers, but real information.
MBC Network News is the voice of a concentrated urban force. The African American population is well concentrated, with over 86% of African Americans residing in the top 50 urban markets. Large urban markets are the most competitive markets for video, voice, and data because they have the most potential for bundled services. According to Kagan, African Americans are the fastest growing group of broadband and online service users.
The news that we generally get is all negative. And of course, we need to have news that encourage people. And I think that having this 24-hour all-news station, actually with black programming, I think is just the greatest thing that could happen.
MBC Network News is the voice of a new advertising sales opportunity. According to the Cable Advertising Bureau, the number of advertisers targeting the African American market has more than tripled in recent years. While the industry has suffered from its worst advertising depression in decades, advertising spending targeting African Americans has grown from $1.2 billion last year to $2.5 billion today. And because African Americans represent a unique target audience with unique spending habits, these advertising dollars are usually incremental to existing budgets and specifically earmarked toward African American media.
It is MBC News, not NBC, so M.
African Americans now account for 2 out of every 3 minority dollars spent, and that spending is growing at a rate greater than any other segment of the population.
MBC Network News is the voice of the future. The latest census projects that the African American population will grow at 3 times the rate of the non-minority population in the next 12 years, reaching 42 million people in the year 2015. At the same time, more than 70% of the national increase in purchasing power for the next 30 years will come from African Americans.
MBC News will really make a difference in the African American community. And I think other communities as well, because there are a number of ethnic programs on, but we're working closer together now. We're sharing ideas, and I think it'll make for a better relationship between all minorities, soon to be majorities in this country. I look forward to MBC News.
In the new media marketplace, cable programming will be developed for the multicultural marketplace. Over 80% of African Americans consider it very important to have news channels owned by and programmed by African Americans.
MBC is America's only television network owned by African Americans. And MBC Network News is the first 24-hour television news service programmed for African Americans.
This is one of the most significant events to occur in the last 100 years.
In January 2004, MBC will cross the digital divide with positive and uplifting news coverage for African Americans. MBC News is the vision of internationally recognized philanthropist and MBC chairman Willie Gary and the team of MBC owners. Heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield, Detroit Tiger and New York Yankee All-Star Cecil Fielder, Marlon Jackson of the Jackson 5, and veteran broadcaster Alvin James.
I'm just proud to be up here with you. MBC is already such a great network, and it's been established in so many homes around the world. I get it in California and get it all over the world. So this is just another visionary idea that's going to go to another level, and just going to make a mark, and just going to get out and have another point of view in America and around the world. So I'm honored to be up here with such great people.
We have staying power. We don't plan to go anywhere. We're going to be around because we are providing the kind of family entertainment that the urban market is about.
Soon, there will be a fresh voice in television news, a fair voice, the voice of urban America. MBC News.
We're going to make MBC marvelous.
Thank you.